So happy Valentine's Day. Welcome to Wellness Wednesday. It is 3 days after the Super Bowl, and we are still celebrating. So I promise not to make today all about the Kansas City Chiefs, although that's what I really want to talk about. So I was asked the question, and the question is, what are the qualities that make a good coach? So I thought about that over the last few days, and I came up with a number of things that I believe are the qualities that make for a good coach. So the biggest thing that I believe a great coach, at least in our space, possesses is this ability to remain free of judgment, to remain free of judgment. And the reason that that's important is I've said this before, many of you probably heard me say this, that no one, including you, benefits from your judgment of them. No one, including you, benefits from your judgment of them. And so, what people want, at least in the context of one-on-one performance coaching, is the ability to have their internal conversation externally free of judgment. And there's a lot of reasons that that's important. And I've noticed this in my coaching career over the years. There have been several people that I may be the only real relationship that they have, meaning I'm the only person that they feel completely comfortable being 100% unfiltered to or unfiltered with. And so that ability or that willingness to remain free of judgment, to not use your shame stick or add in your color of what you think this person should or shouldn't do, is super important. And when we talk about the space for people to have their internal conversation externally, one of the quotes that I repeat often is a thought that originates in fear. So a thought that originates in fear, left unexpressed in the human imagination, can become toxic. A thought that originates in fear, left unexpressed in the human imagination, can become toxic. What does that mean? Well, the human imagination is like a movie set, right? You have actors and actresses, directors, but you also have lights and you have camera and you have action. You have all these things that go on in your imagination. And for a lot of people, their imaginations are more of a friend, right? It's something that they use to make themselves better, to tap into latent forces of potential. But for others, the imagination works against them. And the reason why, at least part of the time, is that they get these stories, these fears rolling around in their head. And because they have the ability to magnify or, as I said, lights, camera, action, that experience that originated in fear becomes so real to them that they're experiencing it from the perspective of like biology as if it's already real. The analogy that I use on this often is, imagine if you and I are walking on a trail in a mountain, right? And we look ahead, and from about 300 yards, there's a pretty good sized animal that is black. And so depending on where you are, let's just say that you're in the Appalachian Mountains in North Carolina. Your first thought is probably, that's a black bear. And this thing starts walking towards you. Well, you're not supposed to run from a bear. You're supposed to freeze. And so your body is going to respond, right? You're going to experience anxiety. It's going to pump blood into your extremities so that if you do have to fight or flight, that you're ready. And as this animal, this creature gets closer, what you discover is that it's actually just a black lab, and its owner comes out from behind a bend in the trail, and you see them as well. But see, you responded to your imagination of it being a black bear, even though it's a harmless dog. And that's what I mean about these thoughts that get trapped in our mind or don't get expressed, is they'll just sit there living on this loop. And one of the big things about being a great coach is just holding space to people and allowing them to share those stories, because what happens is they have to pull that thought out of that imagination, and they have to do something that's really important. They have to put it into language. They have to put words to it, because they're communicating this thought, this story to another person, right? So it passes from this imagination part to the logic part that adds language to it. And have you ever had the experience of talking to somebody and you're sharing with them some of the things that you've been thinking and you're like, that's crazy. I That's nuts. And just the very, act of you putting language and stating that thought, putting it out into the world, unleashes its hold on you. Have you ever had that experience? And I think a lot of us have. And that to me is a place where, or a big component of being a great coach, is allowing people the place to have their internal thoughts externally, because so many times when they do that, they are shipping that idea out. And by doing so, it passes through the logical part of their brain. And now they understand this is a thought that's baked in complete fantasy. This is crazy. This isn't even true. So that would be kind of the first thing, is that you hold space, you are non-judgmental, and you allow people that ability, that ability to have their internal conversation externally. Said another way, you allow them to pull what's in their imagination out and put it into the real world. That to me is number one. The second one is, a great coach is constantly living in this like back and forth, this infinity symbol loop of observation and examination, observation and examination. And I think that our greatest job as coaches is to help people make their unconscious conscious, their unconscious thoughts, their unconscious beliefs, their unconscious habits. Our job is to help them bring that into their consciousness. Said another way, it's to make what is unaware to them aware. And in doing so, what you're doing is you're practicing this observation and examination loop. And so observation of, some of their behaviors, the things that they consistently do or what they consistently don't do, the words and the stories that they tell themselves. And we make this assumption that people are actually aware of some of their behaviors, some of those stories that they tell themselves, some of the things that they avoid. And I find that oftentimes they're not even aware of it. And so what you are is you're kind of a mirror back to them. But again, it's in this non-judgmental spirit, and you're observing their stories, observing their language, observing their behavior, and then you're helping them examine it. And my favorite thing to help people examine is just a very simple question. What would you have to believe for that to be true? What would you have to believe for that to be true? So if they say, "Oh man, I lost this deal and I don't know if I'm going to make it," or blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, all of that is your fear talking. What is the underlying belief that is causing your fear to tell you this story? And then let's hold that up and examine it. And the way that I like to think about this is, if you think about a belief, for example, let's take like I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, whatever. If you take that belief and imagine that you are the prosecuting attorney, and your job is to put that belief on the stand. And if you know anything about being a prosecuting attorney versus a defense attorney, burden of proof is on the prosecuting attorney. And so if you have to take a belief and put it up on the stand, you have to prove that it's real. And when you start having to put it through this context, when you start having to put it through this process, oftentimes you're not going to find that it's real. That somewhere along the way, you have picked this up, usually through your environment. Our environments are made up of our family, our friends, our peers, our teachers, the voices of authority, schools, churches, things of that nature. You've picked this up. You never actually put it through any type of scrutiny. And here it is alive and well today, coloring and creating your perception. And so I believe as coaches, we are constantly observing and examining people's belief systems, and that we can do it in a way that they can understand, number one, this is not baked in reality. And then secondly, how can we help them figure out where this originated? What is the origination point of this belief? I did this yesterday with a woman who, if you were to look at her external world, you would think, my God, this lady is winning. She has a dream house, an amazing family. Her kids are great. I know her kids. And she lives in this like mountain town, right? The kind of place that all of us, if you enjoy the mountains, would want to live. But she finds herself constantly in this fight or flight, fight or flight. And every little thing that happens, and it could be a transaction falling apart, it could be a flat tire, is treated as if it's this imminent threat. So she takes these little bitty minor things and blows them up into major problems. And what I was trying to help her to understand, because listen to what I'm about to say, we misidentify the source of our pain. We misidentify the source of our pain. What she's trying to constantly do is get herself into a space where she has nothing to do, no work. She doesn't have to deal with clients, things of that nature. But I know her, and what will happen if she actually accomplishes that? She will be bored out of her freaking mind. It's not what she actually wants. But see, when she looks at the interactions that she has with people, every little mishap in a transaction is treated like it's a bear on a trail, like it's this life or death thing. And so what I helped her see is I said, look, there is action, reaction, action, reaction. So you have something in your business that got off the rails. There's a certain set of actions that you're going to take to get it back on the rails, right? Like we would all agree with that. These are the actions I'm going to take. But then there's this emotional reaction, and it is the state, the mood that you induce to do those actions or take those actions. And I said, but your state is constantly this one where it is this fight, flight, the world is falling. And I just want to understand, where did you learn that? And so I take them through this model. It's always the same questions. And the question first is, do you think you were born this way? Is it nature or is it nurture? She said, it's nurture. I said, okay, what's your earliest memory of practicing that behavior? And she said that my mom was that way. My mom was that way. She still is today. And I said, okay, so here you were, this kid who has this voice of authority, the person that, and we idolize our parents. We don't understand that they're human until we're probably in like teenagers, late teens, depending on how good of a job your parents did. And I said, so what happened was you observed this behavior from her and you unknowingly downloaded that into your programming, and you are very much running that play to every perceived threat. And there are some threats that is necessary. Somebody breaks into your house in the middle of the night, absolutely. That is a threat that you should respond accordingly. But a transaction coming off the rails should not be treated with the same level of emotional intensity as somebody breaking into your house. But that's what you do. And what I helped her understand is that you were attempting to heal the inner child. you've got this little girl that picked up this thing from her mom. It's still alive and well. And the tendency of people, when we uncover this unconscious behavior, where it came from, is we want to get into conflict with it. We want to fight with it. But whatever you resist will persist. That doesn't work. So, what I helped her see instead is when that little thing inside of her starts to react, right? I said, there's a moment in time that you begin to react to a threat inappropriately. And what we want to become is hyper aware of that moment. We want to get into stillness and awareness. And the way I call this your early detection system. And if you've been on Wellness Wednesday for any length of time, you've heard me talk about this. But the early detection system, think of it like this. If you're in Kansas, where I live, between the months of April and September, and it's hot outside and sunny, and then it goes from hot and sunny to kind of cool and cloudy, and then it starts raining. And then the clouds actually move off. So the clouds go away, but it's still raining. Any good Kansan is going to tell you that that is not a tornado watch. That's not a tornado warning. That is probably a tornado on the ground within a 5-mile radius of you. It's probably already on the ground. Now, in Kansas, you're going to do one of the two S's. This is very important. Listen up. You're going to seek shelter, or you're going to seek six-pack and go out on the front porch and enjoy the show. But what I helped her develop was the early detection system of when her inner child starts responding or reacting the way that her mom taught her to react. And through this awareness, we can start to undo it. And so, as I mentioned, I think that good coaches have the ability to help people make the unconscious conscious. And in a class that I teach called CSO, where I walk people through, it's an 8-week process, and I walk them through the mindset and the mechanics of how I help people coach. One of the quotes that I share with them is that a good coach will help you solve your problems. You have a problem, they'll help you solve it. A great coach will figure out why you had it in the first place. So, to recap, I believe that one of the qualities of a great coach is the willingness to sit in non-judgment. No one, including you, has ever benefited from their judgment of them. Never. I think the second thing, if I'm paraphrasing this, is that we are endlessly curious and patient with people. And we spend the time using the process of observation and examination to help people make their unconscious conscious, to bring what is unaware to their awareness, because awareness creates choice. And people have far more choices than they are aware of. And we help people have that internal conversation externally. We get it out of their imagination through the logical part of their brain so that they can hear the story that they're telling themselves. And oftentimes, I'll tell you, if you want to understand how to be a great coach, just learn how to listen. Most people actually don't need you to try to fix their problems. They just want somebody to listen and understand. That's it. It's the show me, you know me button. And I promise you that for most of you, that whether it's with employees, partners, maybe it's friends, just holding space. Just shut up and listen. And then you'll notice that you'll become the person that people come to share their inner stories externally. So I trust that this was helpful. I trust that you'll apply this. We really love the format that we're running right now, where you all are asking us questions. So if there are specific questions that you want to ask, what we'll do today is, if you're not in the Facebook group, you should join it. But we will post the link to submit your questions there today. And then every week we'll pick a new one. And that's how we'll run Wellness Wednesday, because it seems like this is what the community really enjoys. So thank you all for being here, and live free. Bye-bye.